Hey guys, and welcome back to Call to Perform. Before we get into today's interviews, we would like to share some student statistics with you.
Let's start with first-generation college student statistics. All these facts I'm about to share with you come from Brandeis University's article titled Facts About First-Generation College Students. 33% of students pursuing higher education are the first in their family to attend college. 60% of first-generation college students enter the workforce after graduation, and 81% of first-generation college students reported financial stability as their goal for attending college.
Wow, 81%. And as for dropout rates in the United States, we gathered information from Melanie Hansen in her 2021 article, High School Dropout Rates. These following stats are from ages 15 to 24. Hispanic students had the highest dropout rate at 6.5%, and 36% of students who have a disability, physical or learning, drop out of high school. And overall, half of the alternative schools have graduation rates lower than 50%. Students from families in lower socioeconomic status percentiles are 5 times more likely to drop out of high school.
And just to touch on the school-to-prison pipeline that we have all learned about in our Kent State Education and a Democratic Society class. It's an issue that many people who are not involved in school issues don't know about. School-to-prison pipeline, according to American Civil Liberties Union, is a disturbing national trend where a child is funneled out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Many of these children have learning disabilities or histories of poverty, abuse, or neglect, and would benefit from additional education and counseling services. Instead, they're isolated, punished, and pushed out.
After hearing these statistics that we shared with you, today we are going to be listening and gathering information from Marissa's interview with the 7th grader and Zara's interview with high schooler. Let's see how their interviews went, starting with Marissa and Mia.
So, the first question, what is school like for you?
Ever since COVID started, our school life has changed a lot with the way our school is taught now.
How do you feel it has changed?
It has changed a lot because our class periods are longer and our days are much shorter.
Who is your role model while you're in school?
My dad is my role model.
Why would you say he's your role model?
Because he's always there for me when I need help and having trouble in school.
Okay. How much do you know about how your school is funded?
I don't know anything about how they are funded. The only thing I know is when our school has fundraisers.
How involved are families in deciding what students should learn?
I really don't think any families are involved. I think the districts and teachers are mostly involved.
How involved are students in deciding which students should learn?
The students have no say in what they learn. It is all the teachers.
Do you wish you had more say in what you learned?
Yes, I do.
Okay. How involved are teachers in deciding what students should learn?
The teachers have a lot of say in what we do in learning class.
How involved are communities or businesses in deciding what students should learn?
I honestly feel like the community doesn't have much say in what we learn except the people on the school board.
Okay. Do you have any examples of seeing involvement from businesses and communities members in your school?
When we have events or fundraisers, I see a lot more of our community involved. But when we are not having an event going on, the community is not involved with the school.
Okay. How has school changed for you students today, would you say?
The biggest change is with COVID going on, things are a lot different in my school.
Okay. What would your dream school look like?
My dream school day would be only a couple classes a day with less work and the teachers not being so involved and the students having a lot more say.
How do schools meet the needs they give to kids?
They are giving us education.
Okay. How do schools know they are successful in meeting their needs?
By seeing our grades and seeing if the students are improving on things.
What is success in school?
Meeting my education goals because I want to see myself successful in the future.
How would you say that you came up with this?
Because I want to see myself successful in the future.
Okay. What role would you like to play to make everyone successful in schools?
I would help the students if they were having trouble or struggling in school.
How does your understanding of success compare to how the state understands success?
I think that students should be there to learn and not to have to take tests that the state recommends, and the state looks at students having good grades and passing classes.
Okay.
Thank you for that interesting information, Marissa and Now let's listen to what Zara and have to say.
What would you change about your school if you had the opportunity to?
I would make it to where we were more comfortable with having more uncomfortable conversations, because if we normalize having uncomfortable conversations, then it would be easier to navigate harsher topics.
No, I agree. Do you have a role model in your school? And what does that role model do for you in school if you have one?
Mr. Osborski. He is just the epitome of, a very empathetic and aware teacher. I don't know if I can mention this, but, there's a pride flag in the urinal, and students came to him and told him, and he came up to me and was like, do you want me to, get the janitor to get it? How do you want me to navigate this? And he was just very open to learning how to navigate situations like that, and he's very open to, pronouns, names. He's just a very good example of an empathetic teacher who genuinely cares.
How much do you know about how schools are funded, if anything?
I don't know much about how they're funded, but I know, number one, the arts are very definitely lacking in the funding department, but I do know about the levy, and that one of my favorite teachers in 8th grade got laid off, and it was very devastating to see such an empowering person be let go. Yeah.
No, that sounds really hard.
Yeah.
How, in your opinion, how involved should families be in helping decide what students should learn?
I think it depends the topic. I think the opinion of, families, communities, and everything, definitely matters, because, you're sending your student to school, you know, you definitely should want to be involved in what they learn, but there's also a boundary, I feel like, in how much they should be involved, depending on, bias and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. How about, how much do you think students should be involved in what they learn?
Students, I think, the same amount. It is their own education, and they should definitely be able to have a say in what they, can and cannot learn, what should be mentioned in the classroom and what shouldn't be. But also, it's really about navigating bias is, a really, harsh thing. Not harsh, a hard thing to navigate, but, bias is definitely really important when talking about, the things about race or, the LGBT community in schools and stuff.
Right. No, that is really important, especially if you have a group of people working to make reform in schools. You can't have, people who have, bigoted opinions, because that's going to just dictate everything, and that's going to create this horrible, ripple effect almost.
Agreed.
That's not okay. How involved do you think teachers should be in deciding what students learn?
Once again, I think it's a lot about bias, but it's also, teachers, there's obviously a curriculum, but there's a way that teachers can go about that curriculum, if that makes sense. I think, they should definitely have an impact, especially since they went to school and have a degree. Maybe it's a little different because they are more knowledgeable on the topics that they're teaching, but, if we're talking the subject they went into, they definitely should have a more, say in what they should teach, because they've, been educated on it. But in topics of, race and stuff, maybe integrating more of, a employee, environment where it's safe to have conversations and navigating how to address that in a classroom. If that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And then lastly, how involved should community members and businesses and organizations be in what students learn?
Businesses can be a little iffy, I think, like financially and stuff. Like, I think it's all about bias and motive. Like, if, you're wanting to change, like maybe something about that school, maybe you don't agree with something they're teaching, if it's going to have a positive impact, then 100% I think you should express, like, your opinion and stuff. But I think if it's for, like, financial gain, then maybe rethink why that business is involved.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, tell me about your ideal school as a student.
My ideal school, I would want to walk around, and I would not want to worry about if a boy is going to look at me a certain way, because society is like I guess entertained the idea that clothing is the reason for everything, and that skin is inherently sexual when it's not. So I would want, I guess, the idea that women aren't sexual objects to be more known in schools. I would want it to be a safe environment for the LGBT community, for any race that comes into schools. I would want it to just be a safe environment for everybody to walk in and know that they're going to be accepted for whoever they are, however they express their gender identity, their sexual orientation, anything.
That's amazing. How should schools meet the needs of those that they serve, do you think? I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think first, like, surveys is definitely a good way of identifying what the school needs. In EDI, I think we're going to do a QR code thing where, like, you can click and you can, like, put in your, like, personal thoughts on what should happen at school. But I think taking those and really navigating, like, okay, how can we deal with this, and having a specific group to navigate that and taking it seriously, I think that could be a good way going about it.
I like that.
Yeah.
How do you think schools would measure the success of their how do I word this? You discussed a lot about, surveys and kind of pushing that as a way to build up success in a way, because I think the more opinions and voices that are heard throughout a school, the more successful it can become, because we're hearing, everyone's voice and everyone's getting a say. But how do we measure that we're actually going towards success?
Like, success after graduation, or success, like, inclusively?
Success as in meeting the needs of the people that need it in our schools.
I think you'll be able to tell when, like, for example, like, with dress code and stuff, with those petitions, there's a reason why so many people signed that petition. I think when, like, I guess, asking. Like, and if you ask and a lot of people are telling you that, like, you are in the right direction, then keep going in the right direction. I think in this society, there's always going to be someone who's telling you that you're not going in the right direction, and just knowing your goal is the key to success, I guess. Like, hearing the voices and continually, like, hearing those voices.
I love that.
Yeah.
How would you define success in a school?
I think success is very subjective depending on the person. I think going to school, everyone has, like, a different, vision of themselves. Some people go and want to have the, best GPA. Some people just want to get through it. So I think, like, success individually.
Yeah, success just for if you were to try to define success for a group of people, and it can even just be like from your own understanding, how you view success.
I think if the person is genuinely proud of what they've done and know what they want to do with what they've done, then that's success to me. Like, you know, you don't need to have the highest GPA to be successful. I think if you genuinely are proud of yourself and you know that you are going to get to where you want to get to, then you're successful.
I love it. I agree. Last question. How is your school handling the current issues of COVID-19?
I think it's very difficult because, I mean, superintendent would, like, if he says masks, it's a political thing, but then people get mad if we're unmasked. There's really no way anybody can be happy in that situation, so I understand how it can be, like, difficult. But I think, like, they're handling it in the best way they can in the situations that we're in. Like, you know, it's not like we can know how many people are vaccinated, you know, so that's, you know, all in the air. Like, you know, personally, I think the masks after having the student sections, you know, like, I get how that could be a logical, like, solution because we're not having big gatherings anymore, you know, and we're still getting those, like, COVID updates. Like, what they do is we have a remind, and they basically send, like, a COVID letter, like, telling us whenever a kid has COVID or something, like, basically letting us know that, like, you know, a kid had COVID at the high school or something like that. So I think they are handling it the best way they can, like, socially, but personally, I think we should look at it in a way where masks aren't political, because, I mean, the people who are being hospitalized are those who are unvaccinated, so not every kid has a say in schools of if they can get vaccinated. So I feel like, you know, masks being optional, I understand, but also we aren't even, like, socially distanced. So I feel like it would make sense to be optional with masks if we were socially distanced, but since we're not, I feel like it would be smarter to keep them on. But, I mean, that could be my personal opinion.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and having this interview with me.
I had a great time.
So now that we have heard what these students have to say, we have come to the conclusion that as a whole, students should be more knowledgeable with school funding and how it works. Is there a reason why schools aren't talking to the students about school funding and other sensitive issues and topics like mentioned to Zara? What do you think of these interviews, Krista?
I think that there needs to be a push and need for student involvement within the schools, no matter how old the students are. The students know themselves better than anyone else does, so why do we continue to shut them out when it comes to school involvement that includes adults and community members?
I'm not quite sure when this is going to change, but I have to agree with you, Krista. The students know themselves best. At least give the students a way to speak up on how they would like to learn and what learning style they think is best for them.
To wrap things up, we heard from Marissa and then Zara. We appreciate and hear what these students have to say about school reform and their knowledge on it. We're going to keep these interviews in mind as we move forward to episode 6 to wrap up this podcast series. Thank you so much for listening.